Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert, your host for today. I am the editor of Native News Online, and we have a friend who's no stranger to Indian country, OJ Semans out of Four Directions, Native Vote, also works with the Coalition of Large Tribes as the Executive Director, Legislative Affairs Director. And welcome, OJ. How you been?
Oh, well, thank you. First of all, I almost couldn't stop that dancing after I heard your introduction with the music. It was just good music. Yeah.
I love that music. It stimulates us. Hey, listen, you've been through another election. You've been at this for decades with Native Vote, monitoring it and everything else. Four Directions has done great work in the past, really observing and monitoring potential voter suppression. You brought successful lawsuits. And was there voter suppression this time on November 5th? Or tell us the state of Indian country came to voting this time.
Well, when it comes to the Native Vote, there's always voter suppression. One of the things I've always said is that voting is local. And so when we talk about voting protection, I know, we're talking about the presidential election, but mainly the local election officials are worried about getting natives on the county commission, getting natives on the water committee, getting natives within the school board. That's the main focus of trying to keep natives from voting. The only difference is when it's national, we're able to put a spotlight on it more so more people can be aware. But don't get me wrong, it's always occurring. One of the things they learned is that if they let us know early, we're going to be there. And when we're there, we'll straighten them up before, the actual vote is cast. So what they've been waiting is last minute saying we're not going to do this. And that really ties our hands as far as us responding and trying to get things worked out. So even with all the hardships that was going on, we had in Montana. In Montana, we were only there for a few days, but we were able to take and get the numbers up from the 2020 Senate race to the 2024 Senate race. Roosevelt County, Blaine County, and Glacier County. That's your Fort Peck, your Fort Belknap, and your Blackfeet reservations. The Native Vote actually percentage-wise went up. And there was a shift from the actual 2020 election, and both were senatorial elections, so you can kind of treat them the same. But there was a shift in which the Republican Party actually dropped in like Roosevelt County, 4.18%, in Blaine County, 3.18%, and then in Glacier County, 1.21%. So there was an actual drop and an increase towards a Native preferred candidate. And we had problems with Roosevelt County. And yet we were still able to get those numbers out there. And I guess one of the biggest things that I see that happened in November of 2024, nobody was willing to put in the hard work. It's one thing to put up a billboard. It's one thing to put something on a wall saying, "Hey, you need a ride? Call me." That don't work in Indian country. Nobody's going to look at a strange number and say, "Hey, I'm going to call this person and get a ride to the polls." It don't work that way, And at the end of the day, you got to make sure people are paid for that hard work. That didn't happen here. You look at what the Democratic Party did. What they would do is post phone numbers, say, "Hey, you need a ride? Call me." It don't work that way. And so I would say the biggest drawback, because and we were in Wisconsin too, and I can tell you, even though we're nonpartisan, our goal is just to get people to get to the polls to cast their ballot. We look at two things: casting your ballot, counting that ballot. Those are the two most important things. The radio advertisement, the TV advertisements, the posters on a wall, the big signs going into town, those are all fine and dandy, but there's no hard work behind that, and there's no really interconnection between what they're doing and the Native people. And so I don't think we did our messaging wrong. I think what it was is we just didn't have enough people that wanted to put the hard work in. And as a result, I can tell you, in Montana, in Indian country, Vice President Harris was pulling in 80+%. In Wisconsin, she was pulling in close to 90%. Now, a lot of times she was getting a little bit below what the Senate was, if there was a Senate race there. But again, it's a choice of Native candidates. So it's really going to take funding, first of all, not only for ground organizations such as Four Directions, but being able to fund Native media, so that when people are hearing a message, they're hearing it from Natives and can relate to that. We always look at it this way. When we had these forums in Arizona, Nevada, and Wisconsin. By the way, in Nevada, the Native vote made a big difference, in which the incumbent senator kept her position. In Nevada, the Native preferred candidate was elected. And even Nez, President Nez, who was running for a very tough House seat there, got 95% of the Native vote. I mean, so the thing about what really happens in Indian country, it's kind of like our law enforcement and our government funding. We're never given enough money to actually do the job we're supposed to be doing.
Hey, OJ, I want to go back to a comment you made about how the county officials want to exclude Native Americans from either being on maybe part of the election commission, other local things, school boards. Is it they feel threatened? Talk about that a little bit.
Two things. First of all, they do feel threatened, but you also have to remember the stereotype. It is the fact that we fought for years and years of the fact that because we're on Indian land and they're living on stolen land, we don't pay taxes on the land we bought back, and they pay taxes on the land they stole. They don't feel we have the right to participate because of that taxes. But the other thing is being afraid of having Natives on the county commission. Well, first thing they're going to do is spend all the money. And we in Oglala, Lakota County, it's all Native Americans. They haven't went bankrupt yet. In my reservation in Rosebud, Todd County, it's majority is Native American, and guess what? They're doing just fine. It comes down to us being able to project what we would like for our children and our grandchildren to see or to do growing up, and we want to change the face of what they're taught. Because the fact is that they're not taught anything about us. The only thing they learn about us and our culture is what we teach them. And sometimes, with the homelessness, sometimes that doesn't get there. So yes, they're scared of us, of taking these positions. But at the end of the day, we do just as good, if not better, than what they've done.
Mm-hmm. And OJ, I took special interest, and of course, I think a lot of the country did, is that right after the election night, the NBC used some information, research from Edison Research that was sent out made available to the various networks, that said Native Americans voted for Trump at 65%, which you and I both know is erroneous. When we heard it, at least I knew it was erroneous information, because we at Native News had been after the election, we were going to do a post survey, and our preliminary numbers showed there's no way he was getting that kind of he was not getting that kind of response. He was not polling 65%. So I guess my question is, what would your message be, given your involvement through the years with the Native Vote? What message would you give to the TV networks and even researchers on how to really capture the reality of what's going on in Indian country? Because it was a bad sample, 200 and some people, not on Indian land. What's your response to that? What was your feeling about that?
Well, I guess I would tell them the same thing that I tell the local county election officials. Don't be afraid. Come on the reservation. Come and see us. You'll find out we're really, really friendly, good people that only want the best.
That's true.
And as far as the polling, I mean, I rolled my eyes on that. But you know what? If their polling benefits tribes, I'm all for it. I mean, it won't be the first time the truth wasn't told and somebody benefited from it. So, I mean, if that's going to benefit tribes, I'm all for it. But amongst ourselves, amongst our own people, we know the truth. And like I said, in Wisconsin, Kamala Harris was out 85% of the vote. And you have to remember, not all reservations are 100%. So you're going to take 5-10% out of that of non-natives that are actually voting there. And the incumbent senator in Wisconsin won. And that was from the Native vote. And all you have to do is look at Menominee is a perfect example if you want true numbers of what happened in Indian country. And there you're going to see she was up 80-85%. It's been a while since I looked at the numbers. We are doing a report, but what they reported, it does not reflect what Indian country did.
Yeah, we did our own poll, and she came in 51%, or excuse me, Trump came in at 51%. However, you're exactly right. Our reporters started going right to the Secretary of State's vote count and the actual vote, not exit polls or not a poll that we did through the internet, but it was actual votes, and votes don't lie. And you're right, Kamala Harris was polling 89-90% in some of these reservations, and our own polling shows where the suburban natives seem to vote a little differently. They may be more assimilated, and that's a discussion for some scholars, I guess, to talk and analyze that. But those who are on or near reservations are still very strong Democrats. And so, and we are actually, and I want to get your report, because we'll probably incorporate in our report, because we have so much information from the 4 polls that we did over the course of this election that we don't want to just sit on the shelf somewhere and locked in a computer. We have reams of papers that show a lot of information. We're having people analyze it. We're going to come up, generate a report, hopefully by mid-January, end of January. And at this point, the election's over. I'd rather do it right, take its time, get through the holidays, and do a good job with it. But I really do believe it's going to be a document that people can look at and really analyze. And another takeaway I have, OJ, is we're not a monolith, right? So many people think that all Native Americans are, same stroke, and we have 575 federally recognized tribes, another, I've heard 600-700 state recognized tribes. You put all that across, there's no way Native Americans are all going to think alike. And my joke is, when my kids were younger, I get them in the car and say, "Where do you want to go to eat?" I had 3 gorgeous kids, same mother, same father, same blood running through their veins, but they had different opinions of where they wanted to eat. One might say Taco Bell, one would say Olive Garden, the other one would say Wendy's. So, it's not all, even with that, and I use that as an example, that people who always want to put Native Americans in a box, like we all think alike, can't think for ourselves. No, we are not a monolith. So that was one of my big takeaways. I already knew it, but I think that was really came out through the election results as well.
Well, and I agree with you on that. But there's one thing that bonds us all, is the fact that, in 99% of the cases, we have treaties. We had our relatives that fought and died in order for us to be here today. And so that is one bond that keeps us together. The other thing I was thinking about, I have relatives all over. I have relatives in Utah, in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have relatives down in Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, all over the place. And you know what? They voted in the interest of the tribe. Now, one of the things I do know, there are individuals that are tribal members that have issue with our tribal governments or our tribal leaders, and that at that time they're not really voting for the president. They're voting against the tribe or a tribal leader. That happens all the time. But I can tell you that the reason our relatives off reservation also understand what's going on is the fact of the understanding of our treaties, our culture, and our sovereignty. And so when we're talking about housing, we're talking a totally different perspective in which we're talking our treaties. Our native urban Indians understand that. When we're talking healthcare, yes, they're fighting for healthcare within the urban areas they're at, but they also understand when they come home that they want to be able to receive proper healthcare. Which, the only thing I say about IHS, the only thing they get better at is getting worse. I mean, so it's always out there. But the other thing that I see on these exit polls is self-identified Indians, meaning that they want to be an Indian, and if they were, this is how they vote, but they're really not natives. And so there are so many problems with that poll when you look at the actual true numbers.
And I think that, and I know that I was at one of your native vote forums over in Milwaukee, and you had some researchers up there. And one thing I remember as a big takeaway for me on that panel was researching in Indian country is very challenging, and I think most people know that. And hopefully a lesson can be learned from this exit poll that was just so erroneous. And there are going to be people who run with it and say that Trump won 65% of the vote from Native Americans. It just did not happen. I do want to pivot over to the subject of the second Trump administration. You and I both probably would agree that the first Trump administration was really kind of disastrous for Indian country, and there were some good things that happened, but not really. I mean, there's just a lot of and I was actually at the Republican convention in Milwaukee, and Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, he's a conservative Republican, he's a member of the Cherokee Nation, and he actually said that Trump called him down to Mar-a-Lago back in March of this year and said, "Hey, we really didn't do a whole lot in Indian country. Next administration, we're going to do more." And then Trump blamed it on Zinke leaving. Now, remember, Zinke, his Secretary of the Interior, left under a cloud of investigation, corruption, whatever. But he blamed it on Zinke. And be it as it may, I think that there's some opportunities, and maybe through Mark Wayne Mullen, there can be some positive things. He has a hard act to follow. I mean, Joe Biden brought in Deb Haaland and on. But I guess my question is, what do you think? How should Native Americans or Indian country in particular position itself within the Trump administration to safeguard some of the things that Joe Biden did for us?
Well, first of all, I don't know if there's going to be such a thing as safeguarding. It's going to be a fight all the way. But I do know that tribal members need to become part of this transition team. We need to have people sitting at that table and discussing what is going on within Indian country. I found, through my lifetime, and I've gotten in quite a few arguments and quite a few battles and quite a few court cases. But I've also found out that a lot of people animosity towards us or there is a lack of understanding. and that if you have a Native that is educated on an issue, that can sit down and talk to them, not only as far as the non-Indian thought process, but to bring in the Native thought process of putting and weaving them together, uh, that it works. And so, I would strongly encourage all tribal leaders, tribal members, to see what they can do to become part of this transition team. Don't sit back and say, it's no good, it's all over. It's never over for us. We have been through so many things that we don't give up. And later on, I think you can look it up online, but there's actually a link where tribal members can go and look at the transition team and put their name in for what they might be interested in. So that's my message, is that we're not done, and we still need to be a part of, regardless of whatever administration comes in. We need to be there. We need to let them and know our feelings and educate them, and in the long run, people will know the right thing to do. And I'll say, we may be beaten down, but I don't want to be beaten down where I can't get up. And we need people there to ensure that at the end of any administration, we have somebody there to help us back up to move forward.
Yeah. And OJ, I want to switch subjects again, and this time I want to talk about the op-ed you sent to Native News, and we published it. Probably the most read story this week on Native News, and it actually pushed back on the Senator Tom Tillis, a Republican out of North Carolina, who kind of put a block on the Remove the Stain Act. And that's the one with the Wounded Knee that you have been working diligently for a long time to have the decorated awards that were given to people who, from the cavalry, who killed our people at Wounded Knee in 1890. So talk about why you wrote it, and tell us the story, what Tillis said.
Yeah, well, I'll back up a little bit. The legislation he was talking about was to take and put the Wounded Knee Massacre site into protective status, and so which it couldn't be sold or traded off, and would be looked after by the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe and the Oglala Sioux tribe. His comment is basically that one of the things I really think is important. This is Native American Heritage Month, right? I mean, this is a month that the United States said we need to respect their tradition, their culture, and their feelings. And then this guy from North Carolina gets up and takes and insults every one of the key reasons this is Native American Month, and does so without a blink of an eye or caring about anything. And if you're going to pick a fight, what I saw was him standing there as a non-Indian, as a U.S. senator, trying to pick a fight in getting tribes to go against each other. And I wrote that op-ed. The reason I wrote it that way was because I don't know if the Lumbee tribe or the tribal leaders were aware of what he was doing. And I wanted to give them a chance to say, we oppose it or we don't. I mean, I just want to know the facts moving forward. But I also know right now at this time, it wasn't tribes. It was a white guy that decided that he would take one of the most horrific mass murders within our own history of the United States and use that as a tool to get what he wants. I mean, that's just disgusting and it's disgraceful. And I wrote it not as, even though I was disgusted, I wrote it on behalf of the actual descendants, whether they had relatives that died there or relatives that survived. They carry those scars yet 134 years later, and he got up there like it meant nothing. I always say in Indian ways, what goes around comes around. And the way that he has talked about these descendants and what he's done to get his way, it's going to come around and bite him in the butt. I mean, you don't do that. You can't be a honorable, moral person and stand up there and do something like that.
Yeah. And he did it all in the reason, and his rationale was defending the Lumbee tribe wants to get legislation where they get full federal recognition, and they were actually federally recognized back in the 50s without the benefits of finance. And so, and there seems to be a big push and pull on that. And have you heard from anyone from the Lumbee tribe as far as reaction to your op-ed?
No, I haven't. And, and that's the other thing. The Coalition of Large Tribes, we fought very hard to get the new land fee into trust regulations done. And during that process, being able to expedite the recognition of federally recognized tribes. But there's a process, and that is one of the things he's going out there trying to do is to circumvent the process that's there that could, that could actually get him federal recognition. But no, he's saying we're not going to do that. We're going to instead hold the hostages of the Wounded Knee Massacre descendants and consider them collateral damage because I want my way. And at the end of the day, this isn't about the Lumbee's federal recognition. At the end of the day, this is about a non-Indian United States senator that just wants to get his way. I mean, there's process there. There's a path, and yet he does not want to do that. And he would step on the backs and on the shoulders of the descendants that lost their people by being murdered by the 7th Cavalry in 1890, December 29th. Oh, which reminds me, I hope President Biden looks at this and on December 29th takes that stroke of the pen and remove those Medal of Honors given to those soldiers that created that massacre. Now that would be something worth talking about.
Yeah. And those are good thoughts. Hopefully the president will do that. And as you know, he did issue the apology for Indian boarding schools in late October. And back to Tillis, the senator from North Carolina. My understanding is he's held up other legislation for Native Americans, all in defense of the Lumbee Nation recognition. With the lame duck session, hopefully, and something's really critical that we see gets past this because it's due to expire. It was extended till December 31st. It's due to expire December 31st is the special funding for sugar diabetes, for diabetes. And that is something that they can track where it has saved lives in Indian country because that special attention is very much needed. And I'm hopeful the politics is not such that he holds that legislation up. And I always get a little confused by how one senator or one member of Congress can hold up a lot of legislation, and this is really kind of sad. I think we need to look at that. Hey, what gives you hope as we go forward into 2025? This is the last question. What gives you hope, OJ?
My kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids, they're all doing the same thing I'm doing. They're out there. They're doing the hard work and knocking on doors. They're doing everything that they need to do to ensure that we are able to take the next step. I'm very proud, not only of my children and my grandchildren, but all the other individuals that we've worked with throughout the United States, the young people that get it, and that I know I could roll over tomorrow and not be here. But I've also know that there are so many amazing young natives out there that it's going to go on and we're going to be well represented, if not equal to better.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just in terms of, you and I were talking about this at one point, how we remember when there were less than 100 lawyers who were Native American. Well, and that was just a few years back. Now there's close to 2,000, my understanding. So that's good news. And when you get educated in the law, and especially those who take special interest in Indian law, that's going to only help us in terms of depending on, or regardless of who's in office, I should say, regardless of who's in office, you have some strong minds that will push, defend Indians' law, defend Indian country, the tribal sovereignty. That's just so important for us. And
Yes.
to our viewers, I want to thank OJ for coming on again. He's a good friend. And to our viewers, we're in the midst of the holiday season. So, as I like to tell you all the time, hug that grandma, hug your grandpa, hug the elders, take care of your aunties and uncles, and let's have peace on earth as we enjoy the holiday season. Chi Miigwech will tune in again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chi Miigwech.
Thank you, Levi. You have a great day.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to scan this code or go to the link below to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, and please be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chi Miigwech.